Okay, so we are good to go. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Clarissa Bejeda, and I'm the Associate Director of Career Services here at the Mays Center at A&M San Antonio, and welcome to Majors and Minors Week. This is our first time doing it in a virtual setting, but we're really excited because it also allows us to build a library of wonderful alumni testimonials. So this is something we want to continue to build on, so thank you, alumni, for being represented here today. We are at the block of our studying behaviors in society, so this is really welcoming back our criminology, sociology, and psychology majors to kind of talk about what their journeys look like, how they've actually leveraged their degree from A&M San Antonio into their next journey, and what are maybe some of the things on the horizon for them. This is also in conjunction to academic advising. So Chris, thanks so much for representing the team here. And then special shout out to Dr. Mary Kay Cooper, who is just a complete phenomenal talent. You know, my check's in the mail later, right? Though, Mary Kay, just she's just so great with our alumni affairs and really make sure our alumni know that they continue to have a presence here, because especially for current students, we want to connect y'all as much as possible because there's a lot of great storytelling that could be had. So this is only the start of the week, so we still have a few more sessions to go. So if you do have questions about your major, maybe you're thinking about your minor, join us on this. Again, whether it's live or recorded, we would love to have you. So a couple of housekeeping. Now, we will be using the chat box to answer for Q&A. Again, if you have a question throughout the session, feel free to ask. And that's really just being respectful to the mics. In this virtual environment, we've all seen where it's easy to talk over someone, so we do want to be sensitive to that. Of course, muting if we're not speaking at this point. This is also a reminder that we will be recording it, and it will be posted on the Tamusa Mays YouTube channel within the next 24 hours. So it should actually be up by tomorrow morning, the latest. So introducing our panelists. Again, I am so just pleased to have some wonderful alumni here to share their stories. Our first alumnus is Fidela Arroyo. She's actually a 2013 criminology alum. She actually is working within bail bonds, which is such a fascinating area. It's one that I'm sure your degree has helped you quite a bit kind of navigate those waters. And the words of encouragement she wants to offer to our freshman class are, you're young and have the world at your fingertips. Be bold and go make those dreams a reality. Do not think you have life all figured out yet, which absolutely so true. The joys of college, you're kind of figuring it out as you go. Life does not come with an instruction manual. It is all about how you respond. Do not let the fear of striking out keep you from playing the game. So wonderful piece of advice. Thank you so much for that. Next, we have Dawn Collins, who's a 2019 alum from our sociology program. And Dawn's actually a full-time grad student at UTSA. So go runners on that one. And I would love to hear kind of why you decided to go into grad school. Again, what is the plan after graduation for that? And her plan, again, her words of encouragement for our freshman class. I love that first statement. Remembering that education is a gift. Once you've received it, no one can take it away from you. Each class you take helps you grow and you evolve into a new person, wiser and more rounded. Sociology allows you to explore many different areas of society, which help you gain a much better understanding of the world. These skills are very beneficial to almost any career you choose. Dawn, yes. Especially we want to promote in social sciences that there's so much transferable skills, so much power skill development that can go into any industry. Automatically with sociology, people may think, oh, you can only go into counseling, when it's like, well, you can go into business, you can go into IT. Again, it's all about the skills that you're developing and how do you pivot and leverage those throughout the way. And then our final alumnus is actually part of our Jaguar family now. Mary Ellen Walker, she's actually a 2018 alum from our psychology program. She supports the university as a facilities coordinator. Mary Ellen was also very, very active in our SGA initiatives here while she was a student. So I would love to hear your perspective on what student involvement looked like and how that helped you kind of develop those skills to really help you launch into your professional career. So now that those intros are done, I just want to dive right into the questions. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then we just chat. So the first question I have, let's go ahead and start with Fidela on this one. If you could tell us a little bit more about your educational and professional background. Again, do you have further educational goals? what have you done in your career so far? Why are you going in the track you are?
Okay, so I first went to San Antonio College because I was very indecisive. I had no idea what I wanted to do in life. From there, I originally thought I was going to do nursing. Once I started clinicals, I realized that wasn't for me. And so I went into the criminal justice program. I got my associates. And then I was actually too young to get my peace officer's license. I was only 20. You had to be 20 and a half to apply. So I figured if I have to wait, I'll just further my education meanwhile. So I went to A&M San Antonio next, where thanks to y'all, I got my bachelor's degree next in criminology. And then from there, I had actually got into major surgery, which is why I went into bail bonds. It's not exactly where I was going at the time, but I did it meanwhile so I could recover. And then I went to A&M Commerce and got my master's. And then from there, I thought, well, who would have thought this bail bond thing really did suit me? It was a different perspective. I get to help people in a lot of different ways. I get to see every aspect. I get to see them when they're incarcerated, when they get out. I get to help them come out the other end of the process. I see people that need counseling. We have to be just about everything. A babysitter, because we've got court dates coming up. We have to learn how to be patient, learn different behaviors. So, actually, sociology, psychology, all of those things come into play and have a major role and factor in all of this. And because of that, I learned to love it. There's a lot of different things that the bail bond industry led me into. For example, I had no idea before that there was a professional bondsman of Texas, professional bondsman of the United States. There's an end to race homelessness. There's so many different things, and I'm very thankful for where I am now because I have helped so many people in various ways, from shelters to rehabilitation centers, juvenile facilities. I mean, the places are just endless. But I wouldn't have had that opportunity if, I wouldn't have pursued my education. And it's really what got me through the door because, of course, A&M alone, what a prestigious school. It's the first thing people see. So I'm very thankful for the opportunity because I'm very blessed for where I am today.
Nice. Thank you so much. All right, Dawn, what about you? I think you're muted. There you go.
Okay, better. So my educational journey. So I actually was the non-traditional student. So I had a 20-year career in nonprofit. I worked for a local nonprofit in San Antonio. And in 2014, they restructured and I was laid off. And I thought I would retire there. My passion was there. And so it sort of turned my world upside down. So I, of course, took a little time off to regroup. And when I went to apply for jobs, that 20 years of experience didn't matter because I didn't have a degree to back it up. So I woke up one day and said, well, shoot, I'll just go back to school. And so I had about 30 hours into my associates. So I went to Northwest Vista, did my associates in liberal arts in a year. And then it was time to decide where to go after that. And so I looked at Texas, San Antonio, Texas A&M San Antonio, because I loved the small class size, which matched what the community college life was like. And that was a great experience for me. So I got my bachelor's from A&M in sociology with a minor in women's studies. My 20 years of nonprofit was with the Girl Scouts. So I had spent a lifetime working with young women and adults, training them. And so once I was graduating, again, I was faced with, well, what do I do next? And so grad school was, it was very important to my professors at A&M. And so we talked about it a lot in my classes. And we talked about how that should be the next step for everybody, and to focus on that. And so I applied for UTSA. I visited a few schools, but I ended up at UTSA. I live in Livonia, so I would look to Texas State and UTSA, and it was 50 miles either way. So I just sort of had to decide which was better. UTSA was better for me because the rest of my life is in San Antonio, my kids, my doctors, my friends. So UTSA made sense. They had a great program that had some focuses that I was interested in. And so I am in my second year as a master's student there. I just started my thesis work this semester, and I will graduate in May of 2021.
Awesome. What area of specialty are you looking at?
So I study inequality right now. So I've actually carried that uh, inequality of women in the workplace. I started studying that in my very first social uh, theory class at Texas A&M, and so I've been working and developing that research since I started my bachelor's. And so my focus for my thesis is the inequality of women in the workplace and how ruling texts like the Constitution and the Bible that were written with a hierarchical standard of men being at the top and making decisions for women and how that affects the hiring process. So
Very nice. It's fascinating stuff. So it sounds like you can, what do you think about doing after graduation? Like consulting?
I would really love to do consulting. I'm looking at consulting or maybe doing a continuation and getting my PhD and going into higher education, which every advisor I've ever met with or professor that I've met with, the first thing they say is, you need to be a teacher. And so I love working with people, girls or adults, high school students, and just imparting knowledge or experience to them to help bring them along. That line, education is a gift. I truly believe that is um, something that people don't really understand. Especially when you're new in college. Um, are you in college because you really want to be there, or did your parents make you go after high school, or was it just the next right thing to do? But every class you take is something that you put in your toolbox, and you can take that toolbox with you wherever you go.
Nice.
So
All right, Mary, you're next. So what does your educational and professional background look like, and what are some of the goals that you have on the horizon?
Sure thing. So I also started at San Antonio College right after high school. And then my major there was biology. And then I transferred to A&M in College Station, where I had changed my major to English. And it wasn't the right fit, so I wasn't successful. And I took some time off and moved back to San Antonio. And my major was psychology because it was something that I was passionate about. And I was really involved, like you said earlier, in SGA. And then also Psychology Club and Dr. Don's Memory, Attention, and Perception Research Lab. That's where I spent the majority of my time here. So that really shaped me as a student and reminded me to have passion for everything that I did. But along the way, I developed an interest in higher education, and I wanted to work in higher ed. And so I started looking for jobs right before graduation at A&M San Antonio, and I found this one, and I was promised that it might be boring, and I can assure you that it is not. Every day is a new and interesting challenge, and that's what I love about it. It's problem solving, it's working with people, and these are all general skills that you can pick up from any degree. And so it's just learning how to apply those to your career. And I just recently got my certification for um, it's sorry, trying to remember the name. I remember the acronym, not the name. It's the Certified Texas Contract Manager certification. And so that's above and beyond what I normally do. It's more relevant to procurement, but in my role, I've started to do a lot of procurement, and I wanted to build upon those skills. And so I'm definitely always working on learning more. So
Nice. Well, again, higher education, I totally get it. Our industry is one that we come from really diverse backgrounds, different majors, different life experiences. So kudos to you. Now, since all of you are coming from different backgrounds in terms of your degrees, I want to know, how did you really leverage your time here at A&M San Antonio? How does it translate to what you do now? Was that coursework actually relevant to what you do now? What were those skills that you look for? Do you use that stat on a day-to-day? So I will start with Dawn on this, then go Mary, and then Fidela.
Oh, those skills. I definitely, I gave some thought to that. I think the greatest skills that you can learn in every class that you take, and I know we all have those dreaded words, group project and presentation, right? And like the panic that sets in with people. I was fortunate to have a job where I, at the Girl Scouts, we did a lot of group work, but I also did a lot of presentations. So, um, but it's a skill that every class usually asks of you. And those, I think, are skills you can take to any job. Being able to speak in front of people, whether it's a group of 25 or 200, or if it's a one-on-one interview with a potential employer, learning those skills, you can take that from every class. I mean, we even did presentations in my math classes, which I was like, really? Math? Okay. Um, so I think those are two of the greatest skills. I think the other skill that you get in your classes are your communication skills, whether those are writing skills or oral communication skills. I have done a lot of peer review work, both in my undergrad and at the graduate level, and I think there's some misunderstanding of what written skills should be. And we spend so much time, writing with our thumbs. We have that shorthand that we use. And I'm amazed that people put that in academic work. And so I think it's learning how to write professionally, right? And that you can take those to the job market. It comes first in your resume, when you have your resume or your LinkedIn account, where you can show those skills. So I think those are two or three of the greatest things that you can get from your classes. I think for me as a sociology major, I think the thing I loved best about sociology was the elective selections at Texas A&M San Antonio, because I was able to study so many different areas. So I did health and human services, I did race and ethnicity, I did social stratification. So I was able to dabble a little bit in so many different areas that I can take that knowledge to a multitude of opportunities out in the community for a job. But it also makes me a well-rounded person, right? So I can put those skills on my resume. So I think taking advantage of your electives and really planning out your academic work, because especially in sociology, those courses tie together so well. If you start with the core and you carry it through. And so I think for me, it was just a beautiful patchwork that came together in the end, for a very well-rounded education, especially with the minor in women's studies, because they tied together so well.
Thank you, Dawn. All right, Mary?
So definitely going to cover some of the same things that Dawn did because they're so important. So project management is number one. So, and that's everything from working with people to timeliness, to writing down your processes so that you remember what you did later, which is incredibly important, especially if you're trying to communicate what you did to someone else. Public speaking is another really good one. I had opportunities to do that in class, presenting presentations, but also through SGA with much larger audiences. And that is not the norm when you get to work, but it was good for me. And then most surprisingly, I actually use a lot of statistical analyses now. The ability to navigate Excel has been quite beneficial for me. And it's helped me help others that I work with some of the projects that they've got going on, and collecting data in a way that's more scientific, and without bias. Because sometimes we will do that for our individual groups, and it makes me happy to put on my psychology hat.
Nice. Thank you for that. Yeah, those transferable skills, like I'm telling you, the social sciences I always think are such solid critical thinkers, solid writers, and data interpretation so strong. All right, Fidela?
Okay, well, I basically was going to start off with communication, but I'm not even going to cover it because Dawn and Mary already did very well with that. And I totally agree with the speaking. The public speaking is so important. I mean, I can't even count how many times we've all had to go up and, present ourselves in front of people. But I realized when I was in school, when we had, the group presentations that Dawn and Mary were referring to, there were so many people that struggled with it. And whether we liked it or not, it had to be done. And we're going to have to learn how to overcome that and, just find some way to make it through. Because whether we like it or not, it's going to happen in many different aspects of life. But one thing that I learned most that is going to stick with me forever is perseverance. It's not necessarily a skill. However, I learned when I was going to A&M that there were a lot of people not only having to deal with work or bearing children, a household, but there were a lot of different backgrounds. Like you said, we all come from different backgrounds. But to see everybody go and have the same goal in mind, to be there regardless of the lack of sleep or whatever's going on, to know that in the end, when you finish, there's a bigger goal in mind and it's going to get you further in life. I mean, there's nothing better than that. And then to finally complete it, I mean, I was overwhelmed just when I got my bachelor's. I can't even explain to you the joy I had and the tears I shed when I got my master's. Because in my family, nobody goes to school. So it was a major accomplishment on my part. But I would really go with, I mean, communication is key. If you're not going to be able to communicate, you're not going to make it too far. So practice, whether it be, on a spouse, on a kid, whatever it is, communication is key in life, regardless of what you do. Another thing that I would say is the ability to listen. It's so simple, but if you're not going to be able to listen to people, I mean, constructive criticism, you've got to remember, you're going to have to deal with that also in life, regardless of what it is. And, in my profession, it goes such a long way, just being able to listen to somebody, not even necessarily just giving them advice, but just listening is key. As much as you want to be able to communicate, you can't communicate effectively if you're not going to listen and be patient and understand in order to have, because like they say, a failure to communicate, well, I mean, it all starts with either the lack of communication or the lack of listening. So I would say go for it. Whatever you guys want to do, go for it. The opportunities are endless.
Kudos for active listening. That is an art form. That's something that we very forget about, right? So we actually have a question in the chat that I especially want Mary and Dawn to think about this one. When you were deciding on the majors between sociology and psych, that's a common one that we get. What is the difference between sociology and psych? How did you choose which one was right for you? So just overall psychology, just so you know, is again like the study of the human mind versus sociology is like people as a society. So it's much broader explanation of human behavior. So I'm curious, what was y'all's thought process on this when you were having to decide? Because that's a common one that we get with students that they're like, I'm not sure which one to do. So Mary, can we start with you on this one? And then Dawn will go ahead and lead off with you on that.
Sure. So I was naturally drawn to psychology because of my interest on the individual. And so it should come as no surprise when later, as I did Clifton Strengths, one of my top strengths was individuation. So I see every person as an individual and want to get to know them specifically. And so initially, when I was in the program, I thought I wanted to be a psychologist. And so that was also part of the draw. And then later realized that I love people so much that I might have a hard time separating as I come home work from my family. And so I decided to go a different direction with it, but I definitely do prioritize the individual. So that's what was important to me.
I think for me, it started with I took a social problems course. And so, of course, that social problems course was the catalyst to see um, how society operates within individual institutions. And of course, when I was taking social problems, I didn't know what any of those things meant. But I knew that it was more like the bird's eye view of society, right? Like, in order to work at the individual level, you really have to understand why that individual operates the way that they do. And that begins at a higher level. And so what makes society operate the way that it does, and how does education or inequality or religion or gender make us function the way that we do? And so for me, I think that was one of the draws, was that social problems course. um, to be honest, too, when I looked at sociology, it had less math. So I was like, oh, I kind of like that. Only I took statistics, which of course is math. But I will say that I have found a love for math in the statistical sense, because in grad school, I've taken advanced quantitative research and regular quantitative research, and that those skills that, when you're in high school and you're like, when am I ever going to use algebra, and why does X really matter? X really matters when you're trying to do some data research. And so I really did find a love for it. It's kind of a love-hate relationship, I will say, because I struggle with it, but it played a part. I won't lie, it played a part. But I'm really glad with my choice. And I think the number one thing that I have to answer to people is they assume that sociology means social work, and those are actually two separate degrees. And so if you're interested in social work, that's more the individual level where the psychology courses come into play. But if you want to know why people are the way they are, I suggest sociology, because you get that bigger view.
So Fidela, I'm curious, why did you choose criminology? What was that deciding factor for you?
So when I went to San Antonio College, like I said, I was doing nursing first. And when I started my clinicals, we were at a hospital, and I noticed inmates that were coming in. I mean, who wouldn't notice that, right? So you see inmates that are being brought in. And I realized that a lot of people were very judgmental. Naturally, you're going to think the worst. And there was a guy that genuinely needed help. And just because he came in an inmate uniform, nobody really cared to listen. And honestly, he was only there for a driving while intoxicated. Now, that's not good by any means, but I've seen worse. And he was actually the victim. He wasn't actually, he was a passenger in the vehicle. Nobody would have known that. But when I saw him, it made an impact on me. So when I went back to school, I went to the counselor's office and I asked what it would take to switch over to criminology, because I was so intrigued from that one night. It was actually my first night of doing clinicals. And so I went to go see the counselor, and I had many credits that were going to transfer over. So there were only, I think, 2 additional classes I had to take. So I did it, and I did the one that needed an internship. And when I did my internship, I completely loved it. I did it at the prison, actually in Kennedy. And from there, that was actually my first job. I went and I became the gang coordinator, and I loved it. It was definitely for me. I realized that half the time I look upset. I promise I'm not. It's just naturally the face that I have. So it actually benefited me. It helped. But I realized that I wanted to help people just in a different way. And I mean, like I said, I'm blessed. I'm thankful because I get to interact with people and help them here, and just on the opposite side.
I love how you're really speaking to an industry that is seen so negative, right? Where they've lost their chance, that's it, don't forgive. But you are focused so much on, well, how can we get them better? How can we get them to grow and really re-enter society? So kudos to you. Anything in criminal justice, so much respect for. Again, it's a hard job.
There's
Which
enough people who
actually,
don't need to be there.
yeah, which
They need
actually
to
is going to lead to my
be
next
in
question.
hospitals or rehabilitation centers. It's just that we kind of overlook those things sometimes. So
Nice. So I am going to have the next question of that. I want to know, you know what, let's actually go into the chat real quick. So Lisa has a question for Dawn that she wants to know, do you think that it is harder for women to earn a degree in college than it may be for men?
I think it depends on the field. I think, there are just, and you would learn this in a sociology degree, right? That there are different career fields that are seen as gendered, right? Like, so nursing may be more for women and construction more for men. So, which I don't necessarily agree that those things are true, but that is definitely how society looks at them. So I think actually statistically women do better in college than men do academically. And so I think it really depends on the field. But it also depends on where you're getting your education, right? And who is teaching those courses and what are their beliefs, because they, I think professors help make or break an educational experience. I think one thing that I've learned throughout my college experience, from my first college experience when I was fresh out of high school and 18 and going to night school and raising a family, to my later non-traditional experience, starting college at 49, that it depends on your professors and it depends on your attitude. And that if you let one professor that maybe didn't you didn't have a good experience with, if you let them define your educational experience, they can throw you off track. And so to just remember that you're going to have more classes and you're going to have other professors, and to succeed, to make yourself succeed. So I really think men and women have both have the same opportunities. It's what you make of them. So
Nice. Thank you, Dawn. All right. So next I want to go into your favorite professional project that you've been able to accomplish. So Mary, we'll start with you, and then Fidela will go with you, and then Dawn on this one. Okay.
Sure. So this project is my favorite because it's one of the most challenging, and it definitely required us to be very creative. It was the preparation for getting A&M San Antonio ready to come back this fall. And we ordered furniture, we ordered vinyl, and so there was all sorts of signage that had to be installed. There were a lot of assumptions that we had to make based on what we thought the changes would be in the future and needs of individual departments would be, and we really pulled through. It was very stressful, but on the other side of it, I think it's been incredibly rewarding because the students that are taking on campus classes, they're really incredibly thrilled that they do get to be here in person, and that's important to them. It helps them be more successful. Um, I know I probably would have had a pretty hard time if I had had to take all of my classes online in college. One or two is fine, but this has definitely been the most rewarding because it was the most challenging.
Thank you for that. As a staff member, very much appreciate all your work on that, Mary.
Absolutely.
All right, Fidela.
okay, so I think it was 3 years ago, Bexar County started expanding their pretrial release services, and they realized, back to Don's favorite statistics, they had a very high percentage of juveniles that were getting in trouble, most of them were teenage parents. So what they did is they would send people to various high schools. I was given Burbank High School and Seguin High School, which the irony in that, because I attended both high schools. So I went and I got to help and speak and be a motivational speaker for these young parents to help them realize that being a statistic doesn't mean you have to stay that way. You know, be the exception to the rule, overcome. And that is probably the most rewarding thing that I have done, because now that it's been a few years, I have had children come back to me. Well, now they're adults, but I've had them come back to me and thank me for having faith in them. And I realized that just, you know, a grain of salt of faith is all you need, that mustard seed. But that small impact of just going and visiting them, sitting with them, discussing options, making them realize that life doesn't have to be this way. And to see them now and things that they're doing, and the just simple things, you know, getting out of the environment they were in, now wanting to be better parents to their children, going out, and a lot of them are actually going to school now. I'm proud of them. I mean, a lot of them didn't even think that it was in the cards, that it was even a possibility. But just because they had a few of us go out and visit them on a weekly basis for a few months, you know, that just basically mentors to them, it made a wonderful difference. And honestly, I would say that the joy that I've gotten from that it's priceless. It will forever stay with me. I can't explain to you how proud I am to see these kids come back to me and thank me for something that, I mean, it was easy. All I did was sit there and share experiences and let them know the opportunities that were there. You know, something as simple as helping them to apply to a college. A lot of them didn't know how to do that. They didn't have parents that did that. They didn't have any resources, or just simply didn't know where to look. You know, just being able to point them in the right direction made a world of difference for them. So for me, that I would say that's the most rewarding thing that I've done.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. All right, Dawn, favorite project so far?
Oh, wow. So I haven't been a professional, at least in a job since like 2014, like I said, since I got laid off. I've actually just been a full-time student. So, but I could probably speak just like Fidela to, you know, that mentorship or that making a difference in young people's life. My tenure at the Girl Scout office afforded me the ability to do that for a really long time. I think for now, what I'm involved in it is a volunteering. So I can't speak to a professional project, but I actually have carried through those mentoring responsibilities into the volunteer realm of nonprofits. So I work with a couple of other adults, and we actually mentor high school girls. We have a Girl Scout troop. And so these girls have all been together since they were in the second grade. And we have our last group of girls that are high school students who, once they graduate, then we'll have to find a new project. But I think it speaks to that giving back to people in your community and sharing the things that you've learned or that you've gained, and doing that professionally with something that you have a passion about. And I think that's the beauty of college too, is being able to explore what is your passion. Because, you know, when you're 19 or 20 and you're maybe just starting college, you're not sure what you want to do, and maybe you're going to change your major 2 or 3 times. But it's finding something that you're passionate about, because then I think you'd be able to share the same joy that I see on Fidela's face and that I can hear in Mary's voice when they talk about those projects that really speak to making a difference for somebody else. And so I think that's where the success comes in when you want to talk about a project. So for me, I think it's just continuing that mentorship. On a side note, I always had a joke at my house that with my husband that when I worked at Girl Scouts, I always had a lot of little ducks, whether they were the young girls that I worked with or they were the young professional women that I hired to work within my department and that I could mentor. And so when I was laid off, I sort of lost my ducks, and I was really reeling in my life of what to do. But on the college campus as a non-traditional student, with a lot of young college students, I found my ducks. And so when I was going to college, I was able to carry on that mentorship with my college peers in the classroom. And so I think that was also one of my favorite professional projects, was being able to continue helping my little ducks.
I love that both y'all mentioned mentorship. I think it's such an important part of the college experience, because yeah, at college you walk in, you're like, okay, I have this set goal already. Again, I need to test it out, see if I actually want to do this, interning, all that jazz. But also having a mentor to kind of be in your corner and to kind of challenge you on stuff is so critical. What advice would y'all have for students how to approach a mentor? How do they go about that? How do they start that conversation? And what are some things they need to look for in that relationship? Anybody want to start on this one?
I would say honesty. I had a lot of children that felt like there was a right or wrong answer, and it's not even about that. I mean, unless you're true to yourself, we can't really get you where you want to be if you're not going to be truthful about it. I'm not expecting a certain answer out of you. For me to help you reach your goal, you need to be true to yourself so that we can help you get there.
Nice. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Dawn?
I also think so it goes back to that communication skill, right? Because approaching someone to ask them to be your mentor is about having a conversation. And so I had a young gentleman who was one of my ducks, and we had to interview somebody that was over the age of 75 for one of our classes. And he was having a really difficult time finding somebody. And there was a professor at Texas A&M who would come into the cafeteria like every Thursday when we were in there, because he had a break, and he appeared to be over the age requirement that we needed. So I encouraged him I said, why don't you just ask him? He's always here. And he's like, I wouldn't know how to do that. And I'm like, with the words, would you please be my mentor? Would you please? And so I think it's just having the boldness to go and ask, and being okay if that person says no, because you have a 50-50 chance when you ask somebody. They're either going to say yes or they're going to say no. And it's okay if they say no, because I think people who are approached to be a mentor, they know that it's a commitment, and that they're going to make that decision for what fits into their lifestyle. So you need to be respectful of that, but to just be bold and don't be afraid to ask somebody, because I think for a lot of us, like you hear it throughout this conversation, is for the mentor, it is so rewarding that I think people love to take on that opportunity, especially when they can share their life skills with somebody else. So just ask.
And the worst thing is you get a no, but you will pick yourself right back up and just keep going.
Yep.
All right. So next question I want to go with is challenges. So again, college, it's all about those learning moments where sometimes you fall. And again, what do you do next is a big thing. So I want to know, what has been one of your greatest challenges / learning moments? We want to keep it positive here. And, how did you evolve from that moment? So Mary, we'll start with you on this one, and then Fidela next.
So, one of my biggest challenges in my career was very quickly learning the space inventory rules for submission to the state of Texas. And that's a very oddly specific thing, but it's important because it was something that actually affects funding for the campus. And it was something that had been a challenge for us in the past. And so my director and I really dug in, and it eventually became my area of expertise. So now it's something that when people on campus have questions about, they ask me. And so that was probably the first thing that I had true ownership of in my position. It was something that was mine, and I was able to kind of grow in that role, and so that has been really awesome. That was quite difficult for someone who was just starting out of college, and the whole campus is relying on you. So it was great, and I'm really glad I had the opportunity to delve into that.
Nice. All right, Fidela?
I would say my biggest challenge is I started off as a young parent and I didn't want to be that statistic. And when I saw my child, I actually I worked a full-time job, a part-time job, and I went to school full-time. And to be honest, the one thing, and I know it sounds silly, but all the criticism that I got is what kept me going. Little do the people know that everybody who criticized me and told me I wouldn't do it, they were my biggest motivators. And I actually didn't realize that until later in life. But when I would see my child, I realized that I didn't have the traditional upbringing, and I knew I didn't want that for my child. So just to see her every day, I knew that I was going to give her a better life than I had. And that was my ultimate goal. And it kept me going. And so I started putting her in sports when she got older. And lucky me, I don't know what kind of luck I have. I always say if I didn't have bad luck, I wouldn't have any luck at all, because every team that I put her on, I ended up being the coach. And I just wanted to be that parent, cheering on their kid and, just showing up. But I never had that luck. I was team mom, I was head coach. It just always happened to me. And when those things happened, I met more children that, had a similar upbringing or a lack of a parent. There was just always something. And I realized those kids were, I was helping them, whether it be just in that sport. And then when I got older and then I started off at the Bell Bond Company, I saw how many people, I can't count to you how many people come up to me and say, if I would have just had that one person who cared, that one person who listened, that one person that supported or even believed in me. And so because of that, that's what got me where I am now. Because I realized, rather than you being an adult and meeting me here at the Bell Bond Company, let me try to reach you when you're younger, whether it be coaching you in that sport or mentoring you, whatever it takes. If I can reach you beforehand, I would rather meet you that way in life than for you to come call me, from some facility that you need to be bonded out. I'll help you regardless. But if I could help the youth first and maybe, help them to avoid meeting me here, that's my ultimate goal. So if your kids are on a team, I'm sure I'll see you there.
All right. And I think that kind of also addressed the question that Lisa had, where how did you pretty much persevere through your bachelor's and master's? Like what made you kind of continue on?
It did, yes.
Nice.
Basically, I want to help the youth rather than them visiting me as adults. And my child, little does she know, she had a lot to do with it. That little girl looking up to me made me realize that I needed to not only be a better person for myself, but for her.
Nice. Powerful stuff, man. Powerful stuff. Oh, got a little misty. Very nice. Okay. All right, Dawn.
Wow. It's hard for me to answer that. I think I was very fortunate because I can't imagine working one full-time job, let alone two full-time jobs, and trying to go to school. I was very fortunate and continue to be fortunate to be able to just focus on school. And so that's been great for me. I think if I could back it up to maybe when I was working full-time, I think some of the challenges were, I think probably learning to stand up for myself when it came to the expectations of my employer, because a lot of people who go get sociology or criminology or sociology degrees tend to end up in the nonprofit sector, right? Because the social sciences sort of lend themselves to those arenas. And so nonprofit work is wonderful. It's needed, it's rewarding, but unfortunately, a lot of people in nonprofit work are overworked because of just the work itself. And so I think one of the major challenges was being able to stand up for myself when it came to the expectations of my employer. And so I think that is something that every person going into whatever job, whether it's nonprofit work or for-profit work, is knowing what's right and what's wrong as far as work-life balance. And so finding that work-life balance. I'm also I'm all in kind of person. So setting my own personal boundaries when it came to moving from full-time work into full-time education, that I can be all in. So I've been a full-time student, full-blown fall, summer, spring since I started. And my husband's like, when are you gonna like stop and slow down? So I think it's finding that work-life balance is a constant challenge for me.
All right, so final question I will have for y'all is, what is a resource you would recommend that students utilize if they do want to maybe kind of deep dive on y'all's industries to further explore it even more? Again, like internships, professional associations, any kind of best practices you may have. Dawn, will lead off with you, and then Fidela, and then Mary.
So there's a couple. So in sociology, and I'll post the links in the chat when I'm done talking, because I can't multitask that way on the computer. But so the American Sociology Association is a great resource for sociology students. They have tons of academic research connections on that site. One of my professors at UTSA actually just posted for us a sociology degree guide like 2 weeks ago, and I was like, this is great. I'm going to be on this conference call, and this is a great resource that sort of just looks and speaks to the types of career opportunities for people with sociology degrees. And then I think the other one that I learned about when I was at Texas A&M is AKD, which is the International Honor Society for Sociology Students. It is academically based as far as membership. So it's something that you can be invited to join by your professors once you've met a certain GPA or gotten enough requirements. So those are the academic, I think, resources for the sociology pursuit. As far as research though, I think the Pew Research Center is a great site for me. I've used it throughout my bachelor's and grad work. And one thing I learned this summer in a course was to use a bookmarking tool that's called Tag Packer, where you can actually set your computer up that when you're doing internet research and you find academic articles or maybe website articles or stories that are relevant to what you're studying, you can bookmark them within this website. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this would have saved me 1,000 emails to myself if I had known this when I was an undergrad. And so I think that's one of the best resources. And then I think lastly, the greatest resource that you have available to you as a Jaguar is the May Center. And that was actually already in my notes, Clarissa, but the May Center was just getting up and going as I was graduating. So I got to experience it just a little bit before I graduated, but what an awesome resource for your students. And I love the fact that even as an alumni, I can still use the May Center, and that I can come back and get career counseling, or I can come in and get help with my resume if I need it or anything like that. So I think that is a great tool at your fingertips as a Jaguar is to go there and talk
Thank you
to
so
them.
much, Dawn, for that. Yes. All right,
Okay.
Fidela.
Okay, so I agree with Dawn. Career services, pay that place a visit. It's very important for you to get your resume looked over. Anybody who can critique it or help you to add any kind of spice to it, that's great. Take advantage of it. It's a free resource. You're already there on campus. It doesn't take anything out of your day except for a little bit more time. So utilize it. It's a wonderful thing that you can utilize as being a Jaguar. So why not? One thing that I tell everybody is they forget. You hear criminology and everybody starts thinking, just law enforcement. It's so much more than that. I mean, it's the first thing that comes to mind for everybody. They automatically start. I mean, look at me. I said I went to San Antonio College first. I was just waiting to be old enough to get my peace officer's license. I was so young and naive. I didn't know better. But there's so many aspects. So what I tell everybody when they're just considering it is go volunteer. anything in this field needs volunteers. So rather than applying and not liking it and then feeling like you're stuck in a certain field, go volunteer your time, see if you like it, get your feet wet. Not only are you helping yourself, but you're helping other people. There's so many different things to consider. There's shelters, there's rehab facilities, there's state hospitals. Like I said earlier, there's so many people that don't even need to be incarcerated. They need to be in rehabilitation facilities, drug center. There's a lot of different things. So get your feet wet, go and, court license. There's so many people at the court, district courts, county court at laws. It's endless. District attorneys. There's so many different things, something as simple as a clerk. Everywhere you go, there's so many different aspects. So don't forget that. Go volunteer at a shelter. Do whatever it takes for you to realize where exactly you want to be. You're not going to figure it out unless you go volunteering your time and visiting these places, because there's nothing better than experience. Experience is the best teacher. So go out there and try it, guys, because that's what's going to help you to get your feet wet and see if you like it or not. That way you can figure out where you want to be, who you want to help, and help yourself. Where do you want to retire from one day?
Thank you so much for mentioning volunteerism. That's a huge mission of the May Center, is to encourage that, because of course, not only are you doing good for those around you, but you also are doing good for you. You're getting to challenge yourself and kind of stretch your skills. That's actually how I found my career path. I didn't know this was a thing until I started volunteering. I was like, oh, fast forward, like 13 years later, still in the industry and loving every bit of it. I did include in the chat Tamusa Give Pulse, which is actually a site that students can actually research different volunteer opportunities, and they can actually document their hours and have a log on that. So just in case, again, for those resumes or that personal statement if they decide to go to grad school. All right, Mary, any suggestions that you may have for students to really explore? And then also Thesa had a question for you that she wanted to know, what was validation to you that Tamusa was the right choice to finish your degree?
Okay, so Dawn and Fidela both had some really amazing points and mentioned some wonderful resources. In addition to all of those things, I definitely encourage everyone to talk to your professors and get to know what their individual research interests are. And if you find someone whose research interests align with your personal interests, don't be afraid to ask them if they need help in their lab or with their research, because that can really open doors for you, both as you expand your personal map of the world, but also if you want to continue along the educational route. You're definitely going to need people that have your back if grad school is right for you. And then as far as how did I decide A&M San Antonio was the right choice for me? This really isn't a good story. I'm a pretty hard-headed person. Like I said, I was up at A&M College Station, and I was ready to come back home, and I didn't want to go to UTSA because of all of the horrible things they say about College Station. And it's not a good story. And so I actually took a huge leap and applied here, and was prepared to start taking classes here. And the first day I set foot on A&M San Antonio campus, I was like talking to the Welcome Center. I was like, hey, are you going to process my paperwork? And so I am very lucky. I don't advise anyone to do what I did. It doesn't always turn out the way you want it to. But A&M San Antonio is incredible, and I couldn't have asked for better.
And kudos for mentioning the faculty, especially because Texas institutes, if you're public, you have to be posting those CVs of all instructors and faculty. So that's also a great way to maybe look at those faculty members, like research backgrounds, see, do some recon, right? Kind of see what you're walking into, especially because undergrad research is very much embraced here at the Institute. We have a research symposium every year. Take full advantage of that and really test the waters, which I'm so glad that all of y'all really honed in on, and that you all are very geared towards helping others others in your own ways, which kudos to you, very much applaud that. Now, if you are thinking about, again, maybe changing the major, be more intentional with your minor, again, talk to academic advising. Chris, do you want to provide any information that would be helpful to us, so how they can get in contact with y'all?
Sure thing. Sorry, my video was kind of giving me some issues there earlier, so hopefully you can hear me okay. Yes, absolutely. We're always enjoy visiting with students and kind of trying to figure out if you're not sure or undecided, kind of trying to figure out a degree that's going to match up to what you're passionate about. So yes, anytime and you have any questions or just have questions on the degree plan that you're currently on, you can certainly call our advising center front desk, 210-784-1307, and you can set up an advising appointment to meet with us. And kind of off the subject, I do want to thank you so much for being a part of this, Clarissa, setting this up, and for our panelists. As an advisor, this is like a payday for us to see our former students and visit with them. I love being able to keep in touch with some former students and see what they're doing. And graduation day, if I know in some way, even if it's just answering just a simple question that helps you kind of get to where you need to be, that's the biggest goal and the biggest payday for what I do. So I really appreciate you guys spending the time and giving us your input. This has been great.
Yeah, again, totally echo Chris. Like, this is why you work in higher education, to see these wins, because again, from that faculty perspective or from that staff perspective, I mean, if one little conversation may have changed a path, and you are going out there and transforming a community, it's a trickle down effect. So thank you for everything that you do, and just thank you for taking the time, again, just to be really honest in your conversations and be very forthcoming, means the world to us. Again, this video will be posted on YouTube, so we will have it there to share with other students throughout our journey here at A&M San Antonio, but continue to do the wonderful work that y'all are doing already.